You're listening to the Big Cast, your source for the latest in financial technology. Brought to you weekly by the Best Innovation Group, with your hosts, John Best and Glen Servati.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this, bingo edition of the Big Cast. My name's John Best. I am the CEO of Best Innovation Group. And with me, as always, is the master of ceremonies for our bingo contest here, the caller of bingo, as far as I know.
I was going to say the bingo card nerd. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The bingo card nerd, which this turned out to just be a really fun thing for this year. But anyways, welcome, everybody. We're going to go over the results of give them the background, Glenn. How do we start off with this? How do we get to here?
And we'll be I don't know whether we do bingo again next year. I don't know, but it all basically
next year I want to try Monopoly.
Some kind of labyrinth. Yeah, but it all grew out of, and we'll be doing for sure at the beginning of 2026 our annual predictions episode. And when we did that last year, we kind of found ourselves saying, gee, didn't have that on my bingo card. And then we thought, wait, why don't we give this a shot and actually turn this into a bingo card? So a bunch of these were predictions that we thought really would happen, others that we thought might, and then just some kind of wacky ones that we threw out just for fun. And just let people through like you can find anything on the internet. There's a bingo card generator where you put in all the different squares and created bingo cards. And I am told we actually have a winner, which I'm a little surprised by, given how many wacky ones were floating around out there that might have messed up people's cards. But this is probably a good chance also, John, to mention that we'll be doing a further conversation of this on our CU Town Hall, which will be next Wednesday, December 17th.
The year wrap up for the Town Hall. This makes 5 years.
3 p.m. Is it really? Oh my God, that's right, because we started in COVID.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday, December 17th. If you're listening before then, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. It's free to join. It's interactive. We'd love to have conversations about these topics, and we will be unveiling the winner at that point, who wins a nice prize from America's credit unions too.
Yeah, you get to go to a concert, conference of your choice. I called it a concert because that's how I think think about them.
A concert of your choice, yes.
Yeah, they're concerts, but
And even if you're listening after that to this after that, you may want to go out to the site cutownhall.com. We'll have a replay there, and you might pick up a bit more information about some of these other topics we've been kind of chewing on all year. It's a bit of a year recap too.
Yeah. So let's get into it, man. Let's see what we got here.
Well, I was just going through, and the couple that I thought were interesting because, it could have been good news or bad news, and it turned out to be both. The first couple on the card were the price of Bitcoin. We've all been predicting, but we all just pay attention to your prediction of Bitcoin every year. And we set some parameters on that one, saying that one square would be ticked off if Bitcoin hit 125,000. Guess what? It did.
October 5th and 6th.
In October, yeah. And at the same
time,
it
also crashed.
It also hit 75, which was down. But those are both moves of about 25% in both directions, because we started the year roughly at the 100,000 level.
Yeah, I think that reflects, just getting nerdy about it for a second, but it's just the uncertainty around the tariffs early on in the April time frame. And so, I think we saw that, and then we saw it sort of even out. And I still think there's more to come on that one.
Well, the other one that's interesting on that is it kind of contradicted some of the conventional wisdom around Bitcoin, that it was, a good hedge because it behaved differently than the general market, the standard traditional equity markets. And in both of those cases, it kind of mirrored the markets. April was when the S&P and Dow were down at their bottoms as well, and then October is when we set all-time highs. So it's kind of started riding the same curve, which, again, given the way it's been mainstream to some extent, I guess that might not be so surprising.
Yeah, I think that as time goes on, we'll see that other coins, particularly Ethereum, which continues to churn out real use cases, and with stablecoin kind of, as you mentioned, on the rise, we'll see that, I don't know, Bitcoin's going to, I don't want to say pull away from the pack. That's not the wording I want to use, because that would insinuate that it's going to get more. I mean, more that it's just going to differentiate itself over time. So, yeah.
The other one that kind of falls in that territory, we were watching very closely, and the big success story, and still is the big success story in the AI space, is Nvidia stock. And we had both a metric saying it'll fall 10% over the course of the year at some point, and also that it would outperform the S&P 500. Again, it did both. It was down 32% at one point from January 1 in the early part of the year. And at this point, it is now up 33% on a year-to-date basis, which is more than double what the S&P is up, which, unless there's some bizarre, and I doubt we're going to see it diverge from the S&P that much by the end of the year, it basically says, yeah, it will outperform the S&P yet again. As we all know, the Magnificent Seven stocks have been the ones that have been driving most of the market increase. So, another weird one that goes in both directions.
It goes in both directions. One of the things that I believe that the reason that we had that in there was because of the split, because I believe there was a split in February of 2024.
You're right. Yeah, it feels like ancient history, but that is true. And which, if you hadn't, that stock would be, we'd be getting into Berkshire Hathaway territory in terms of the size of a single share of the stock.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why they did the split. And I think that also sort of, it dilutes it and it affects the pricing, but it was smart given that, you hear all this talk about a bubble and it's, a bubble's one idea. I think the other one you hear is, sort of a cannibalistic pipeline that, hey, we're giving you money to buy our stuff, sort of concept, which is kind of exactly what happened to Sam Fraudman Freed Bankman. Isn't that his name? But I think that diluting the stock helps that concept in some ways because it gives more of it to be out there, more of it to recover. And the bubble thing's a whole nother concept or a whole nother discussion. But that was one of those up and down, and I think we hit both.
And one that was only down and is the most recent news too. At least it's funny because it's not even an additional square on the bingo card, but the Fed Open Market Committee actions on rates. We had a check mark for a 25 basis point rate cut and a cumulative rate cut of taking it down 50 basis points. We hit both of those, and then this week we actually had a third. So it's actually
and who said that might happen?
We even had one that said it might raise rates. That was one of the wacky ones that I don't think anybody was necessarily expecting. But yeah,
I believe I predicted that, didn't I?
Which one?
The Fed 3 rate cuts. I think.
Yeah, we didn't put one for the third on the card, but
I think in our predictions episode I predicted this, didn't I?
And actually let's tie it in. The other one, which I think was about as obvious a slam dunk as you could have had at the beginning of the year, is Trump attacking the Fed. And Trump, even after the rate cut, is still attacking the Fed because he says they're not lowering it fast enough. And, which is interesting to me because the reporting is that where there was dissent among the Fed that it wasn't a unanimous decision to do this. Well, there were 3 people who dissented, and 2 of them didn't want to lower it at all. So it's actually moving even further away from what the president wants to do.
Crazy.
So yeah, that's another one.
Well, he just said, like a dad or something, we have done all the rate cuts we're going to do.
Yes.
That's my version of him. Powell. That's the rate cuts. That's what we're doing.
That's actually not a bad impersonation.
Now he does need to finish his building, that was started 5 years ago or whatever. But yeah. Hey, speaking of that, you know what else happened? Lots of bank mergers.
Yes. We predicted we predicted that a pair of top 50 banks would merge. And yes, that happened not once, but twice.
Yep.
Our first one was Synovus and Pinnacle down in the southeastern region where I reside. And then more recently, and probably a little bit more high visibility, was Fifth Third acquiring Comerica.
Now, Fifth Third is already a big conglomerate of other previous mergers, as I remember.
Yes. Of those banks, Synovus and Pinnacle is interesting. I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were 2 banks that were kind of sitting in like the low 30s, high 30s, low 40s in terms of their rankings overall. And when you put them together, just to show how concentrated things were, they didn't move up that much. They're still only kind of in the 30s someplace. Whereas, Fifth Third was already the biggest of the bunch we're talking about here.
Yeah, pro-America, Fifth Third. I mean, we're just kind of heading in that direction. And, we always talk about how many credit unions there are. I wonder what things look like, community, regional, and large banks right these days. I have to do those numbers at some point.
Yeah, the total number of banks out there is pretty much almost identical to the number of credit unions. I think banks is a little bit lower, but again, that's been because so many have been kind of consolidating and combining, to get to try to bulk up.
Yeah.
You'll see the 80-20 rule is even greater than it is in credit unions. The big guys rule the roost.
Speaking of that, what are we on track for CU mergers? Last year, I know it was like 154, of which I did more than my fair share, or I helped with. But yeah, what are we looking at now?
I'm looking at my notes and I'm trying to remember. My recollection is that we're basically on pace to do about the same as we did last year.
Yeah, I thought it was 170.
It didn't shoot. I mean, I saw the last thing I saw some report from Callahan on a year-to-date basis, it was actually running below the pace of last year, but they seem to have a projection. I don't know what kind of information they had, that by the end of the year, it was actually going to be a little bit higher than last year. I think like in the 180 range or something like that.
See, and I wonder how they count it. Do they count it as, approved by the NCUA but hasn't happened yet? Or do they count it as, once those are approved at that, a merger?
I've wondered the same I've wondered the same thing, because as we know, these things take forever. And guess what? The NCUA was closed for a while, which probably slowed them down even further. And for the record on that, both of those two top 50 bank mergers I mentioned, that's based on announcements. I think everybody assumes they're going to go through, but they're still in the review process.
Right. And my other understanding was that our average size was a bit bigger on the mergers.
Yes.
A part of that was skewed by Wings and Ent, right?
I was going to say that was on our list, and to me, that's going to be an interesting judgment call. We had on the bingo card that there would be two $10 billion credit unions that would come together. If you literally read that, in the most precise fashion, it didn't happen. But boy, Wings and Ent were each just below. They're both in the 9.5 billion range.
Gee, I wonder why.
Exactly. If you're going to go over, you might as well go over by a lot.
Right. Yeah.
But by the time it's approved, or maybe even, I'm not sure if I've taken a look at the September 30 numbers. They may be creeping over 10 billion already at this point. Why not? They're going to, but as soon as the thing gets approved, they're going to be under the additional regulatory guidance of a 10 billion institution anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm a member of Ent, and I've been seeing quite a bit now. All the stuff has changed at the bottom. They're really doing a nice job of sort of communicating to the membership. So good for them.
Interesting. Another one I think was an absolute slam dunk that, I've stopped counting because it's happened so often, is a continuation. And I got mixed feelings on this one. Is
CU bank mergers?
No, stadium naming rights.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, again, we ticked through. I forget how many we said, at least 5 more or something like that. It's so many more than that it's not even worth even counting.
Does it count if it's like, professional, lacrosse? Because like I've, did some driving across the country. Have you seen those guys in Tennessee, the banana guys?
Oh, the Savannah Bananas. They sell out stadiums in the Northeast now.
It's insane. If I was a credit union, man, I'd be all over the Savannah Bananas. Me and the Savannahs and the Bananas would be all day. If there was a Savannah credit union, I'd be dressing that place up in yellow, and I'd be create me another mascot to go with the top hat guy.
Now
that just seems so credit union.
Now you got me curious. I got to go back to their website and see if they have an official financial institution. You're familiar with Buc-ee's, aren't you?
Yes, yeah.
If people don't know,
let's take a mall and turn it into a gas stop. Yes.
A roadside stop. I was really amazed. I don't know. I forget why I stumbled on this. They have a Buc-ee's credit card where you get 5% off on everything you buy at Buc-ee's. And guess what? It's sponsored by a credit union. They have a credit union tie in in Texas, the old Dow Chemical Credit Union.
Okay. That's right, because that's where it started, right? Buc-ee started in Texas.
Started in Texas, and that's a nice kind of local tie-in as well. I have no idea how long it's been around or how much traction it's gotten, but boy, given the cult of personality around Buc-ee's, I could see a lot of people being really happy to have that little chipmunk or whatever it is sitting on
On their card.
beaver on their card.
Yeah, I could see that. So yeah, check out the Savannah Bananas. But okay, so what was the stadium? What was the end result in the stadiums?
Oh, like I say, we've got way more. We only had one entry saying there would be more, and I think we said five, but I mean, like I say, I've lost count. And you make a good point. I mean, is anybody going to complain if it's a high school stadium or something like that? But these were all big enough that they made the trade press.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
we're talking about.
Well, they were big enough that the trade press thought they would, get readers because they're still trying to bang on it as being controversial.
And it would piss off banks. Exactly. The bank, the bank trade association. Look, they're spending your money again.
Yep.
I find it interesting. The one that and this was not this year, it happened last year, is the Washington Commander Stadium. Is named after a credit union, Northwest. But it's interesting that they don't use the word credit union in it. It's just Northwest Stadium.
Huh.
And you have to basically, I think the logo and the coloring makes it clear to people who are from that vicinity. But I'm told that was one that was a major stick in the craw and maybe a misstep, quite honestly, that it just kind of drew more visibility to that use of funds, in our nation's capital where the regulators and legislators are.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think that I've seen a little bit of that where the marketing doesn't explicitly state it's a credit union. I've seen it a couple times recently, and I thought, well, that's interesting.
Actually, now you say that, that's our situation here, right down the road from me. People probably aren't aware of this. The Atlanta Braves, as people probably know, moved out. Well, technically, they didn't move out of the city. They're still technically within the Atlanta city limits at their new place, Truist Park, named after a bank. But the old field, Turner Field, which was also where the 96 Olympic main ceremonies were opening and closing were at, is now part of Georgia State University. And their football team plays there, and it is named Center Park Stadium, which it doesn't have the words credit union in it, but it is the Center Park logo, which is the rebranding for Atlanta Postal Credit Union, which is one of the 3 or 4 biggest credit unions here in the state of Georgia.
Yep. Well, that's pretty cool. Hey, speaking of banks and stadiums, how many credit unions got some banks this year? How many are merging those in?
Last count I saw was 14.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That's our lowest threshold, right?
We had 10. We had 10, 20, and 30.
Okay.
So I'm watching closely. I've got, again, it's one of those inexact science kind of things. Is it approved? Is it when it's been announced? There could be a flurry that gets us to 20, but it seems like it's sitting at roughly the same level that it was last year.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this has been affected by the changes at the NCUA, because it feels like throughput at the NCUA is a little slower, but maybe I'm just dreaming it. But I would think it would have to I guess maybe it could be more efficient if there's only one entity that really has to get through everything and approve it.
It's a good question. I mean, there was some blowback in a couple of states that started to get some enough static from the bank lobby that pushed back. I know a few got pulled back that had been announced that didn't happen. So maybe a few folks.
Yeah, I think the Bank of America Navy Federal Credit Union didn't go through, right? I'm just kidding.
Well, actually, no, but now that you say that, it's an interesting point. We did one of our kind of wild, wacky ones that we threw on I think it was your idea, was, a bank buying a credit union.
Yeah.
Guess what? Didn't happen, but boy, it sure is interesting. I think that's a real interesting thought exercise.
Yeah. I'd be very curious as to how that would play. Would it be a regional bank, a community bank? Do you buy up, a bunch of them? I don't know.
Speaking of kind of not even wacky ones, but ones that you put on, I think this, if I'm not mistaken, was the one that led to the official call of somebody having bingo.
Oh, was it the Venmo one?
Yeah, you threw out there at the end of the year, or right at the very end of this conversation when we were setting up the bingo card, Venmo establishing direct merchant connections.
Yep.
And
but
go ahead, you go.
No, you got it.
I was going to say, I don't know if people how much Venmo has made. I mean, and they were on stage at Money 2020, not specifically touting something as geeky as direct merchant connections, but the fact that, people have been wondering forever how they were going to monetize Venmo, and they're taking a bow for, guess what? We just did it. I don't know if people have seen, Their Venmo debit cards now, they're doing heavy branding directly with several major, I don't know if it's entire conferences. I've seen commercials with the Big Ten and the Big 12. Again, Venmo appeals very significantly to a younger demographic. So I think it's very heavily used on college campuses, and therefore they're moving in that kind of affinity direction. They've also struck deals where, you can use it with specific merchants and get discounts.
Yeah, what was the one I pointed out that we decided that was, would push this over the edge and that we would give that Square?
I got to go back and look, but I've gotten a couple of promotions from them.
This one was directly in the app. It was an option, to directly pay. I want to say it was an airline or something, but
I'm remembering fast food, either fast food or or maybe one of the food delivery services. I can't recall.
Yeah, it might have been DoorDash, but yeah, and I was like, there you go, that's it, because it makes sense, and this is all very interesting because there's still the big discussion point around stable coins and will they, won't they, Mark, Amazon, others. That's a whole nother conversation, but yeah, that's very interesting.
Another thing I saw, and there's always that talk about Venmo horning in and that becoming basically a de facto, transaction checking account for folks. I saw one, and again, the Venmo debit card. Talk about going after this thing hard. I don't know if you saw there. I know you did see because we traded notes on this. They're offering a free year of Perplexity Pro.
I know, and I switched over to do it. I was like, heck yeah, because I'm already paying for that.
And then I also saw just yesterday, and I don't know if you've seen this on the terms and conditions, they're offering additional cashback benefits in terms of rewards programs if you set up a recurring transfer to repopulate the funding in your account. So they're proactively, not just like, put money in when you need it and keep it on your debit card. They're saying, hey, why don't you just put X $100? You just regularly move out of your bank into our debit, your balance on our debit account. It's basically functioning like a prepaid, but they're adding significant incentives for that.
Well, they're giving you some dividend from it, which is not the only other place you see that is when you spend money on like Discover or something, or the cashback credit cards.
Yeah, Venmo being obviously part of PayPal, they've been extremely aggressive this year. So I think
But how are they comparing to like FedNow and stuff like that? Like, people using these things as transfer. I know for my kids, that seems the fastest way to pay, but I still got like my law guy, he's Zelle and Zelle only.
It is. I love. I don't know. I'm sure someone's done the analysis, and it's probably more proprietary behind the scenes. I have not seen a very clear demographic split of, how individuals perceive Cash App versus Venmo versus PayPal versus Zelle. I will say that I have the same experience as you, that more of the sole proprietors and individual kind of folks, jobbers, gig economy people, whatever you want to call them, that are looking for payments, they seem to like Zelle. I mean, and it kind of makes sense because it just drops directly into their existing bank account as opposed to Venmo, where you might have to change your behavior to make that happen. On the other hand, I think a lot of those folks running those businesses tend to be a little bit older. And I think that Zelle skews older too. I mean, we're probably going to get in trouble with Zelle by saying that I think that they appeal to a slightly older demographic. But I'd love to see more statistics on that. If anybody knows anything other than just kind of conjecture, I'd love to see.
Yeah, drop us a line. Yeah, I'd be very curious about that myself.
You also mentioned FedNow, and that was another one that turned out to be even more of a slam dunk than I realized, because it sounded kind of like a aggressive projection.
Yeah, didn't we say like 10 times the volume or something?
Yeah, FedNow volume, we said, all we said was it would triple. Well, it tripled the entire year-to-date volume already was more than triple the entire year of 2024, even after Q3 this year.
Wow.
It looks like it will go well over 5 times the volume. Now, again, it's growing off a small base, and that's still a much smaller slice than RTP has, the other real-time payment rail. But, for all the talk of, how fast, when is this stuff going to happen? And to your point, I don't think the goal is not for anybody to think, hey, I'm going to use RT, maybe businesses, but consumers aren't supposed to be thinking about, hey, I'm going to use FedNow.
Yeah.
It's all around somebody building a front end that gets them to actually ride the rails, and they don't realize that's the way the money's moving.
Telling you, man, my agentic idea is the way to go. You need the UPS store or the Postal Annex store for pay. It should be Payments Annex. That's what we should call the company, Glenn. Payments Annex.
I like
and then we'll also give you digital post office boxes. And then all of our stores will just be robots, and we will serve tacos.
You know what? I think that might have been it. Taco Bell might have been like a taco offer.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes, it was Taco Bell. See,
it always comes back to tacos.
Taco Bell. Hey, speaking of that, what about fintech IPOs? I thought we saw some pretty big ones.
Yeah, all we said was, there'd been such a slowdown in the IPO market, and I think people thought it was going to kind of crack open, but who the heck knows? Well, it did. The two most obvious ones that I thought were worth mentioning were Circle, the stablecoin company, and Chime. Another one called eToro was actually, I think, the first one that kind of created the check mark, because that happened earlier in the year.
Don't they create
online investing, a robo-advisor kind of shop?
Oh, I thought they were lawn equipment.
Yes, fintech lawn mowing. You can pay your bill.
Yeah, that was great.
Going down
I was very excited about it. I was like, oh, this what a marriage. This makes all the sense in the world. Why wouldn't I want to do my finances while I ride around on a zero-turn El Toro, Diablo motor? I'm in for that.
They've all had somewhat different experiences. I would say, Circle was the one that was the wildly successful, and it's come back to earth a little bit, but only relative to its like really, really, heady highs. They're still, well over their, offering price that they went out at. Chime had a little initial burst and then fell below their offering price pretty quickly, which is usually kind of a dreary result for an IPO. But they seem to actually come back a little bit as well since too. So,
they're starting to work their way towards.
I would call Circle a flat out, big success story. Chime, I think, kind of at the end of the day, it's had a few more bumps in the roads. It's not doing badly, but I doubt that was exactly what people had in mind when it first came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the same thing. I think that I think they also thought that Chime would be more aggressive into other parts of the financial market by now.
Well, I'd be curious to see. I maybe it's happened by now, but in both cases, I was waiting to see their first earnings report and just how much more kind of peek under the covers we were going to have to get from a disclosure standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think particularly with Chime, that could be. Oh, speaking of which, I don't know if this was not on our bingo card, but did you see there was an interesting acquisition of a bank just this week, Grasshopper Bank?
Oh yeah, I did see that.
And that was one of those other startup, de novo.
That's a neobank, isn't it?
Exactly, neobank, digital only. Had, pretty good. Again, it was one of those that came out of the gate. I thought was a really good idea early. And this may not be a knock on them. They didn't come out and just blow the doors off growth wise. They may have been taking a slow and steady approach in terms of building a good, solid, infrastructure. If so, more power to them. But they got acquired by another fintech called Innova, which actually deals more in the kind of near prime and subprime lending space. And Innova was not a bank before, and now they have a bank charter.
Yeah. See, I was, for whatever reason, when I first saw that, wasn't there a telecommunications app like Ring Central called Grasshopper? I feel like there was.
I think you're right. I think
I got a little confused around that. But yeah, I was surprised that once I looked into it, that's what it was. And I think these neobanks are going to, particularly ones with, with national licenses, around, the banking licenses are going to get picked off, quite a bit now. I think that's because here's the trick, right? Instead of buying home banking and digital, you go acquire one of these neobanks, or if you're an adjacent fintech product and you need the services of a bank, why not, and you're doing well, why not buy, a neobank?
The other thing that kind of surprised, I was not aware Innova was, and it's Enova, was as big as it was. It's actually publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And this acquisition clearly really struck a very favorable chord with the market because their stock shot up over the course of the day of the announcement, but it actually is up significantly over the course of the last few weeks. So that's going to be an interesting one because it's a kind of, to me, a slightly odd combination.
Now, full disclaimer. Don't go out and buy any stocks because Glen or I said so.
Well, it's also, buy on the rumor, sell on the news. I mean, the big pops happened already, but I'm really
Yeah.
curious to see what happens from here.
Yeah, that's my disclaimer
I
because
know.
I don't want anybody to come get you, Glenn. Because
Thank
I'll say I didn't tell you to do it. It was Glenn, and I have
you.
proof.
And then you'll give out my address. Wonderful.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't I?
You know,
Hey, speaking of that, we can get your address again from the National Change of Address and other places, thanks to the government being reopened.
and that's another funny one. Funny, maybe I shouldn't use that phrase, but
It was terrible for the people involved in it, but yeah, it was an interesting, later than we expected.
That's
Interesting,
the
yeah.
thing. I mean, if you think back, and people forget this, government shutdown was one of the things. And again, this was one that you put on there. And when we were doing the predictions back in mid-January, we were staring at a government shutdown was it March, I think? I forget
Yep,
what the
yep.
exact date was. And it looked like it was pretty much a done deal that it was going to be happening very soon. And then we dodged the bullet on that one. And then, it wound up getting pushed out till September, and then
Yeah,
boom.
but what they did was that to make up for it was they doubled the amount of time it's ever happened, for the length of
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
So that was nice of them. It's like, hey, we're going to be late, but we're going to make it up to you.
So we
Here's
checked
how
it
we're going to
off,
do
but
it.
not in the fashion that we expected.
No, but it's still a win. You still have to call it a win. You can't just.
Before we run out of time, I think it's also interesting to me, not just for the bingo card purposes, but for true prediction purposes, the things that didn't happen. I thought, I don't know if people remember, it was late last year. Elon Musk made a big fuss about how X money, I mean, they actually went out, got some trademarks, struck a deal with Visa. I mean, supposedly X money was on the verge of launch. The super app that X would actually be a financial platform as well. I haven't heard much more about that. Uh, I think Doge may have kind of distracted him for a while. May have also kind of tarnished some of the reputation of people wanting to put their money into X. I mean, that I'm maybe speaking out of turn on that one. But the bottom line was we had, Elon launches X money as one of our items that did not get checked. A campaign promise that did not get checked that it wound up being first floated by Donald Trump, and then Kamala Harris actually followed up because it sounded so good to people, was a 10% cap on credit card interest rates. Well, nothing's happened on that one either. And that doesn't seem to have ever gotten out of the gate. For that matter, the Credit Card Competition Act, and that one I probably took a little more lobbying to keep it from getting out there. But Dick Durbin had been trying to get that on the agenda now for some time, and that still has not happened either.
Yeah, I think there were a few things that were surprising that didn't happen. I really thought he was going to get rid of Powell. I had that on the bingo card. So I thought that somebody would, more states would follow the Illinois interchange limits, and that hasn't happened.
And kudos again to both America's credit unions and the individual state and regional leagues. It was a very unusual sneak attack that got that passed in Illinois, and that's now kind of. Frankly, I don't know this for a fact, but I think even the Illinois legislature realizes they made a mistake and they're trying to figure out a way to gracefully get out of it. But they've extended the deadline out till next July, so they've already kind of kicked the can on it. It's still tied up in legal limbo because rulings have been made against it in many cases. So even though it technically passed in Illinois, it still has not been enacted in Illinois.
Yeah.
And because of that, then some other states did go down that path, and nobody else has ever brought it up to a vote, to my knowledge. I know it hasn't passed anyplace else. I don't think it's even gotten to the point of being voted down. It just never even, they realized they didn't have the votes, and it just never actually got to the floor.
Which, a little surprising, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. The other one that was, again, thinking back to late last year, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, were making noises about basically, again, this was back, because of sanctions around Ukraine, et cetera. Russia was really agitating, trying to get that group to set up its own international payment system. And there was a lot of talk about that. And it got a fair bit of press, but if you read through it, it was basically a bunch of people agreeing to start a study committee that would actually explore it. And we all know how those things go. And I've heard nothing about that for at least 6 months. So that's another one that didn't happen. Not that I expected it to, but I didn't expect it to vanish to the extent that it has.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I didn't think it would just fall off the earth. So, but here we are.
So that's a general recap of where, and this is to some extent a precursor because these are some big stories too. But next week, our podcast will be with our buddies again, the broader roundtable to discuss what we think of as the biggest stories. Oh my gosh, we actually, I don't want to jinx us. We went through an entire podcast without mentioning the most common topic of 2025, which actually was Times Man of the Year. Well, yeah, let's just save it. I'm sure it'll be the first thing out of everybody's mouths next week. So let's enjoy a break.
Yes, that's what I was. And for given that I'm on it, that's a huge win. So,
but yeah, that's a teaser. Next week we'll have our last episode of the year because we'll take a little break over the holidays. But our big stories of 2025 roundtable with our friends Ann Legg, John Janklius, and Lou Grilly.
Love it, love it, love it. All right. Well, Glenn, where can people find you if they want to, engage you in business stuff, in business?
Discuss things over a hot cup of cocoa?
Yes.
Well, they can find me in Atlanta, Georgia, but if they want to do it virtually, probably the best way to do it. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me through my firm, 154 Advisors. And LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. And hey, we love getting feedback through the Best Innovation Group site, big-fintech.com. Feel free to drop any of us a note there as well.
Yeah, same here. That's where you can find me, all those places. Also, if you go to the dark web and put in a guy who looks like Glenn, you'll find me there as well. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, I think that's going to call it. And I'm looking forward to next week's next round of the podcast. But Glenn, thank you as always for just all the work you do and putting this together. I nominate you as being the Time Person of the Year, but clearly you got one vote, and it was me. Well, two, and my dog.
Oh, wait. I don't think you heard about it. I was actually the runner-up for the FIFA Peace Prize, too.
Really? You were? Oh, I would not.
They called and said they're sorry. Maybe next, well, it can't be next year. It'll be 4 years from now, probably, at the next year.
I would love to see you win a prize. You might win the Best Innovation Group Payments Professional of the Year award next year. I know you're in the running.
Start a Peace Prize. Come on.
No, we're not doing a peace prize. We don't understand peace, so it's not.
Okay, how about if I can broker peace between banks and credit unions?
You should get something for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
You should get some sort of the Mediator of the Year award or something. I agree with that. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and we hope you have a fantastic holiday. And like I said, find us at big-fintech.com. Thanks, everybody.
And again, if you are listening before the 17th, join us on the town hall where we're getting some more details around the bingo card and unveil our winner. cutownhall.com. You can ask for an invitation. It's free to join. And if you're listening after the 17th, you can find a replay.
Awesome.
Always
take care, everyone.
Done. Take care.
Yeah, man. You too. Take care. Bye.
Check back each week for the latest from the Big Cast. Or better yet, we hope you'll consider subscribing for free via Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Tweet us at Big Fintech, email info@big-fintech.com, or visit us at big-fintech.com and click on the Media tab, where you can post a comment or check out our archive of hundreds of past episodes. See you next week.